What's going on, everybody? I'm here to review the 2022 Denver Broncos season. In the offseason, I did predict a 5-12 record. I'm not one of these fans who drinks the Kool-Aid that the media sells me, that the Denver media sells me, that the Denver Broncos themselves sells me, that their social media team sells me. I look at this team for what it is. Um, I was never a fan of this Russell Wilson trade, not because I think Russell Wilson's a bad quarterback, but because the team wasn't ready for a quarterback like Russell Wilson. And I said that all offseason. I said that Russell Wilson will not be able to overcome this offensive line. Russell Wilson will not be able to overcome the weapons that he has. I mean, people were talking about the Broncos receiving core and offensive line like they were so much better than the Seattle Seahawks offensive line. I'm sure after 3 weeks of being behind the Broncos offensive line, he missed that Seattle offensive line. And I'm sure he missed the Seattle Seahawks wide receivers too. I mean, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Any one of those two players are better than any of the Broncos starting receivers by far. The Broncos receiving core is below average. Now, Jerry Jeudy has come up a little bit. I'm starting to think maybe the Broncos were using him incorrectly. I think that he's a better receiver than Courtland Sutton at this point. Courtland Sutton needs to go. I don't know why we gave him a huge contract, but I think that Jerry Jeudy has definitely been getting misused. Although I would like to see the performances he's been putting up towards the end of the season continue into next season and be more consistent. I'll give him his flowers once I see consistency out of him. So yeah, let's get into it. So week one, Denver ended up losing to Seattle. Seattle was outmatching the Broncos. They were running the ball effectively, throwing the ball across the middle effectively, quick plays across the middle, which is how you beat the Broncos. You just run it up the middle, hit quick plays again across the middle in the passing game, and you will beat this team. You'll be able to drive down the field and score with ease. The Seahawks should have put up 30. They didn't. They decided to get away from what worked, which was a common theme all year long when the Broncos would play other teams. And it allowed the Broncos to stay in the game, but the Broncos still lost this game due to the Broncos coughing up the football on offense. Melvin Gordon fumbling the ball per usual. Week two, the Broncos were just objectively better than the Texans. Barely, but better. The Broncos aren't better than many teams. I think the Texans are probably the one team in the NFL that the Broncos can confidently say that they're objectively better than, but that won't be the case for long, in my opinion. I think the Broncos will be the next Texans eventually. Then the 49ers gifted the Broncos a win. Jimmy G couldn't hit the side of the barn. Not only could he not hit the side of the barn, he decided he wanted to walk out of the back of the end zone and gift the Broncos a safety, which gave the Broncos the win in a 1-point game. Not because the Broncos defense sacked him in the end zone and caused a safety, but because inept offensive play by the 49ers, inept quarterback play, walks out of the back of the end zone, lack of awareness, total mishap on the offense of the 49ers caused them to give up 2 points to the Broncos. So then they go to Las Vegas. During the first half, Las Vegas was getting cute, experimenting, not doing what works, kept the Broncos in the game. Then in the second half, the clamps came down. They started running the ball with Jacobs, and the Broncos could not stop Jacobs. They had no answer for Jacobs that game. They started throwing the ball across the middle, which the Broncos obviously can't cover with slow middle linebackers like Singleton and Josie Jewell. So the Raiders kicked their ass, scored 30 on this top 5 defense, which isn't really top 5. On paper, it's top 5, but in reality, it's not. Then they play the Colts, an offense that was just as inept, if not more inept, than the Broncos offense, and the defense allowed them to get in a field goal range to kick a game-tying field goal, then a game-winning field goal in overtime, I believe. I didn't even watch this game. I'm thankful that I had something to do that night and didn't watch this game. Then they played the Chargers the following week, which was almost just as bad. I mean, the Chargers, they were literally trying to lose this game. They were begging to lose this game, and the Broncos still couldn't get it done. The Broncos muffed the punt in overtime. The Chargers kicked that game-winning field goal, and the rest is history. The Broncos take a loss there. So right now, we've played the Seahawks, we've played the 49ers, the Raiders, and the Colts. I didn't see a dominant defense in those games. I didn't see a defense that went in and suffocated these teams. I saw inept offensive play by all of these teams. I saw teams that didn't play up to their standards in these games. It was bad offense by these teams, not good defense by the Broncos. Go watch the games. Go watch the games. Then they play the Jets. Zach Wilson was horrible this game. The Jets were horrible this game. The play calling was horrible. They didn't run the ball. They didn't hit the middle of the field like they should have, but they still came out with the win. Another team with inept offensive play that the Broncos almost won against. Then they play the Jaguars. The Jaguars straight up gave this game away. Trevor Lawrence, instead of throwing the ball into the back of the end zone, decides he wants to throw the ball right at Justin Simmons, and fans are going to be like, yeah, Justin Simmons is the best safety in the NFL. He's great. He's the best. He's this, he's that. He's not the best. Okay. Because if you would have thrown the ball accurately, it would have been a touchdown and a win for the Jaguars. Then they play the Titans. The Titans' strength is running the ball up the middle with Derrick Henry. What did they do that week? They did not run the ball with Derrick Henry. They decided they wanted to throw with Ryan Tannehill, which almost costed them the game. When they had a chance to put the game away, Malik Willis goes and fumbles the ball because they want to get cute. But the Broncos won that game. Then they play the Raiders. This top 5 defense was on notice. They had the spotlight on them. All eyes were on them to come up with a play, to come up with a stop in overtime. And what did they do? They leave Devontae Adams wide open for a walk-off touchdown. That's what top 5 defenses do, right? I mean, that's what they do. They give up walk-off touchdowns in overtime. Then they play the Panthers. They get their asses whooped because what did the Panthers do? Run the ball up the middle, hit quick passes across the middle, and the Broncos have no answer for it. The Broncos did score garbage time touchdown thanks to the refs, courtesy of the refs, courtesy to bad officiating. But the Broncos got their asses whooped. The Ravens, Broncos defense, another game where the Broncos defense was put to the test. The quarterback for the Ravens, Lamar Jackson, got injured. The backup was in. The backup threw a pass right at Justin Simmons' face, like he was wearing the other team. If he would have just thrown the ball accurately, that would have been a touchdown. But he threw the ball right at Justin Simmons, pad his stats, add to the narrative that Justin Simmons is the best safety in the league, which he's not even close. His own backup is better than he is. And that's where I stand on that. Then later on in the game, the receiver heaves the ball into quadruple coverage for white jerseys, a ball that had no business of being thrown. Justin Simmons gets an easy pick there, lollipopped right at him. He's the best safety in the league because the other team threw the ball right at him. And yeah. And then in the fourth quarter, with the game on the line, Broncos have to just make a stop to win this game. What do the Ravens do? They drive it right down the throats of the Broncos' number 1 defense. They drive it right down the field and get a game-winning touchdown. Then they play the Chiefs. The Chiefs fuck around all game. They go up 27-0 very quickly, and then they let their foot off the gas. Then they play around. They experiment. Let the Broncos creep back into the game, and then they finally score when it's needed to put the game away. The Cardinals, you have Colt McCoy lollipopping a ball right to Justin Simmons' hands. Justin Simmons should be sending a thank you letter to him and thanking him for the free interception, the stat padding, and the free hype. Then you have Trace McSorley at the end of the game looking at Justin Simmons, throwing it right at him. But Justin Simmons will get the flowers like he's the best safety in the league for that. No, not even close. Those are thrown right at him. His interceptions were a product of bad quarterback play. They were not a product of good safety play. So we're going to look at the teams like the Cardinals, the Chiefs, the Ravens, and the Titans. All those teams were playing inept. They were not playing to their strengths. They were messing around. They were going against what works for them. And they allowed the Broncos to hang around, but they ended up pulling out the win anyway. So you go to LA. The Broncos got absolutely destroyed with running up the middle, with quick passes across the middle. Higbee went off that game. Tyler Higbee went off that game. And this was a backup quarterback who didn't know the playbook, and they had to stick to basics. They were not allowed to experiment because Baker Mayfield didn't know enough to experiment, and that's why the Rams thoroughly kicked the Broncos' ass. Then the Broncos play the Chiefs again. The Chiefs go through the motions all game, go through the motions, escape with the win. It's not a game that they take seriously. They're like, oh, we're playing Denver this week, so I mean that's how the Chiefs take it. And the Chiefs won that game. Nothing to really speak on there, other than Patrick Mahomes throwing an ill-advised throw to the back corner of the end zone to Justin Simmons. That is one that Justin Simmons actually had to somewhat earn, as opposed to the rest of them, which were just thrown right to him. His other interceptions were the equivalent of the quarterback walking the ball over and handing it to him. So, yeah, I'm not going to call him the best safety in the league. He's going to have to show me a lot more than that. Then he plays, and speaking of Justin Simmons, last game of the year, we play the Chargers. Justin Simmons gives up 2 touchdowns. No one talks about that, but people want to talk about him punching out a couple balls. What about the 2 touchdowns that he gave up? What about the fact that the Chargers were coughing up the football all game long? What about the fact that the Chargers pulled their starters in the third quarter? What about the fact that the Chargers had nothing to play for and still almost beat the Broncos? So the Broncos finished the season 5-12. We're going to go on the off season, and it's going to be another going to the playoff bowl. It's going to be another, we're going to hire this coach. I mean, right now, Sean Payton and Jim Harbaugh, their systems don't even fit the strengths of Russell Wilson. So I don't even know why anyone wants them to be our head coach. The Broncos need a coach that's going to be as similar to Pete Carroll as they can find. Jim Harbaugh and Sean Payton, not even close. It'd be another shoving a square peg in a round hole, just another big name that they would sign or trade for that wouldn't pan out because he doesn't fit the strengths of Russell Wilson. So we'll see what happens first off season with new ownership. We'll see. Time will tell. I don't expect anything different. That press conference that they had after firing Hackett showed me nothing different. And I expect nothing less than for the Broncos to hire a coach that won't fit the system that they need to run, and they'll have another losing season. They'll fire him. I saw George Payton falling on the sword for John Elway instead of coming out and saying, I wanted Dan Quinn. I wanted to develop my young quarterbacks. I wanted to utilize my draft capital that I acquired through the Von Miller trade. I wanted to not sign him to an extension. Instead of saying all these things, he fell on the sword, took the blame for John Elway's bullshit, and he deserves to be fired for that. So I thought that George Payton would hold him accountable, but he didn't. He fell on the sword, and yeah, it's disappointing to say the least. But I don't expect anything different. I expect more of the same, and until proven otherwise, that's what I'm going to predict. I'll be here to document all the offseason. I'll be very active this offseason. So follow me on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, same handle, Mile High Bubble, and I'll keep you guys posted.